This is Vibe Science, a top 100 wellness podcast presented by the Radcast Network, breaking wellness barriers and making health truly personal. Here are your hosts, Ryan Alford and Chris Hanson.
Hello, and welcome to Vibe Science, special edition here, because I got Chris Hanson in the studio. What's up, Chris?
What's up, brother?
Hey,
Good
man.
to be here.
Mind, body, and energy. I'm just feeling the energy in the room.
We got a good vibe going.
I know.
About to get even better.
Hey, I'm ready to get lit. That's what I'm talking about. I'm kind of already lit, but I'm really ready to get ready. I got Lara Heimann. She is the founder of Lit Yoga. What's up, Lit?
Hey, I love it. I should just be called Lit now. Thank you.
I know, Lit Lara. That's
Lit
what I'm
Lara.
telling you. I give pet names to all my guests. I think like that. I just what I do. I'm a marketer.
Yeah.
And so
I'm Lit Lara. I want everybody to feel lit up. So when they see me, when they move with me, I love it. Lit Lara. Thank you so much for having me, Ryan, Chris.
Yeah, we're excited. I mean, it's all about movement, right? But Chris and I had this exact conversation on the ride over this morning, talking about like just getting it in, like 20 minutes, like movement, like, you know, we're talking about resistance training, but just getting the body moving in some way. I know that's part of your philosophy, right?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes that time is the biggest kind of hindrance for people. You know, they think if I'm going to have a movement practice, it needs to look like this or has to be for an hour. And, you know, the body really responds to physics. It's like Newton's law. Things at rest want to stay at rest. And then things in motion want to stay in motion. And you have to just provide a stimulus to get it going. So you can have your own dialogue or negotiation and just say, let's just get on the mat or get at the gym or whatever it is and give myself 20 minutes. And often what people find is once they get moving, all the beautiful things that happen with movement in every system of our body makes us feel lit up and we want to keep doing it. But it's that initial drag to get it. And that's why we, you know, when you do it regularly, it's really encoded. You know, we have that feedback loop and we know even on our days where we feel sluggish, we already know the outcome of movement. It's been, you know, wired in us, baked in us. So we just show up anyway.
Lara, I'd like to take today to maybe break the stigma of yoga a little bit. Even for myself,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big guy. So they say, I mean, I'm 6'5", 270. So
Yeah.
A big dude.
It's a big boy.
Yoga and me are like oil and water. You know, it's like, and I'm athletic. I'm just not that I work out 5 days a week. You know, I'm in decent shape for my age, but man, I fought the yoga thing. I'm drawn to what I know it would do well for me,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. How do we break that stigma?
I understand that so much, Ryan. And that is something from a marketing standpoint, we really struggle with because our style of yoga is not what you would picture, what you're probably envisioning about yoga, lots of bendy type of things. That's where I brought my physical therapy and my neuroscience background and looked at the way yoga was being practiced and realized it wasn't as inclusive as it was really purporting to be, wanting to be. And that's why so many women were drawn to it and many men shied away from it because they had this thing like, I can't even bend over and touch my toes. But yoga really, the stigma to break is the idea that it looks a certain way. All yoga really is in this mass umbrella is the invitation to raise awareness and consciousness. And there's no better way to do that than through the vehicle of your body. You know the sensations when you're lifting weights, when you're running, when you're biking. You are really tuned in, or we hope that's what you're tuned in. And yoga is just asking you to do that to the nth degree so that you're paying attention and truly embodied. Embodied just means that you're in the present moment, really. Because our body is always present, our mind is rarely present. And so it's a way of using what we already know to be true, that our body is present. Why don't we go in through the body and pay more attention? So what I would say is pick a yoga class, do Lit, for instance. I'm really proud to say that when I had a studio, 20% of our clientele were men, which is it's usually about 2% in most. And it's because we brought in so much more of the functional movement, of the priming of the body for the movements. You're not just coming in like from your car and starting to go through big movement patterns. You're really starting, we call it the reset. It has a very specific blueprint. And that was really based on my physical therapy. I worked with very involved, neurologically impaired clients who needed to just repattern movement. They needed to get their motor function back. So we went back to what we all went through in our developmental stages in wiring movement. That's where our brain grew, and that's where our postural muscles, our deep core muscles really came online. So we went from a floppy baby to being bipedal. Well, when we get on the ground, we have so much more support. And for a big guy like you, getting on the ground and doing this kind of primer before you start doing bigger movement patterns is setting up your system, your brain and your joints, and the muscle and fascia, everything involved, to be able to acquire kind of those ranges of motion that might not have originally been available to you. I think another thing about yoga, let's break the stigma, is that it's not this performative, acrobatic, bendy type of movement. It's, that unfortunately was really marketed. I've been practicing yoga for almost 30 years. So the explosion of yoga happened about, 8 years into my teaching and practicing. And what you see on all the covers, this was even before social media, but in classes, is this like go to in range, wrap your arm in a bind. These are things that would be really hard for you to do. You have muscular density. Those ranges of motion are not going to feel great. But the thing is with men, you're going to try, you know what I mean? Like you're going to be like, I'm going to freaking do this.
Yeah. Fail, but try.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And right. And that's a terrible feeling when you're like, I'm struggling to even try and get this. So I'm just, F it. I'm just going to not come back to this. And so it's really, yoga really, that wasn't the intention, but that has been the kind of, the practical actualization of it here in the Western world. And that's where I really came in and was a little bit of a rebel. I mean, the yoga people used to say what I was doing wasn't yoga. And I was like, who are you to tell me what yoga is? I mean, any practice of any kind, and we see this in science, evolves. It evolves based on the needs. Our modern day lifestyle, we need more movement variability. We don't need to go to in range of motion, sink into our joints and just hold it there, but thinking we're going to, somehow see like a light in the sky and have this, I say you're not like any less spiritual if you can't do some of these moves. It's really about working with where you are and improving that so you're more balanced.
Chris, I know you're a yoga guy, right? You do yoga.
A little yoga, yeah. Did a little yoga this morning. I put it on Instagram. You can watch on my story.
Yeah. You know to do a downward dog right in the middle of the airport.
Yeah. I don't know about the middle of the airport, but no, yoga, I love this conversation because, we were talking about this a little bit even earlier, but the male ego with things like yoga, like even I've gotten into Pilates and Reformer this past year. I would have gotten into none of these things if it wasn't for women. Like it was always an invitation from a girl.
Yep.
And now I don't do yoga as much just because I don't get as much of a workout, but the Pilates Reformer, for example, I'm 1 out of 12. I'm the only man in there. And then there might be, which is funny, and the same as yoga classes, it'll be me and then say like a professional Dolphins football player. And that's what I think is funny when that sold me. When I see professional athletes, these big dudes, doing this stuff where I think, these guys have millions of dollars of training facilities. And in the off season, they're doing this. That tells me something. Like these guys know their body and mechanics better than I do. So I'm a huge believer. And I actually have talked to some friends with studios in the last 2 weeks saying, how do we get more men to come in? And I think I've never thought, one, the male ego for sure, I know, but two, the part I didn't think is what you said is just the mobility aspect. We want to try, and if we're not good, we say, well, fuck this. I'm going to go back to doing squats. People, men in general, we don't like the weak phase before you gain the strength and get strong. We need the patience to get
it's
through
humbling. And I think
Yeah.
I always tell people embrace that. You know, I work with professional athletes, and the moves that we do are, again, they I think you would really like it. I think you would find it incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I created this method, I was like, I want to have the most efficient movement experience possible. And that would be, I want to include mobility in many directions, many planes, lots of getting up and down, getting on my hands, inverting, getting on my hands, strengthening the shoulder girdle in different ways, 2 hands, 1 hand, all kinds of things. And I wanted to raise my heart rate. I didn't want to have to do yoga and then feel like, okay, now I got to go for a run, because, you know, that's 2 hours of your day and most people don't have that. And then I wanted the mental, you know, just the mental cleansing that it automatically gives you too. So, and it's, you know, to your point, like working with athletes, they do enjoy that humbling thing because they have so much, usually success in other ways. So it's actually nice. But for just a person who's not a professional athlete, they don't necessarily like the humbling. You know, they want to feel, most of us want to feel successful at what we're doing. And so I try and reframe it and be like, isn't this amazing that we can come and each and every time we can find that it's not easier, right? And I think that's kind of a through line for life. You know, so many of the messages that I feel on the mat and that I speak of are just apply in life. And that is that life is hard. So let's prime ourselves for it to be resilient and not shy away from those moments that we feel like, ooh, this is challenging. And, it, you know, but within that, you don't want to be challenged to the point where it's not available. So that's where the teaching is super important, and the education. And what I found in the yoga space, that was another thing that was lacking, and probably also, you know, made it less of welcoming for you, Ryan, is that many yoga teachers, not to their fault, really to the just system as a whole, because there's one accrediting agency and they don't do much oversight at all. They've improved, but there was just spitting out all these teachers who were so passionate about yoga, and they had almost no knowledge about the body, about biomechanics, about functional anatomy. You don't have to be a physical therapist to understand these things. And so in my teacher training, I go through it and people come out, whether they've been scared about learning anatomy or, you know, resistant to it, and they end up loving it. And that's the thing, is that we want to feel at home in our bodies. And the best way to do that, whether you're teaching or practicing it, is understanding it. You know, most of us didn't get this education in grade school, middle school, high school. And so going your whole life and not understanding the importance of the scapula is kind of crazy because then you wait until something is wrong and you go to, you feel like you have to go to somebody. And what I'm trying to do in this lit method is the number one thing is we educate. So we talk about neutral spine and neutral pelvis, how to move in the pelvis versus, how to move in the hips versus move in the pelvis. You want your pelvis to be primarily very stable. Yes, you don't want it to be locked, but you don't want it to move in lieu of your hips moving. Your hips were designed, they're huge synovial joints. They're designed to move trillions of times. So if you're going to the ground, trying to forward fold, Ryan, and you're tight, like in your hamstrings, I have everyone hip hinge and bend their knees. We don't do any kind of forward fold with straight legs. That is just not a functional move. It's loading the axis of the spine in a way that isn't efficient or effective. And you're gonna be limited by your tightest place. And so instead, what I use the mat in my education and my own practice for is to move better in life. So it's not just you go there, you feel good, and you leave. It's like you take those movement patterns and they become more encoded in life. And that's really the magic, is like, how do we age well? Well, we age well by moving well.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing, yoga, we talk about mind, body, and energy on this show, you know, the fundamentals of kind of overall wellness today. I mean, yoga really does capture all of them. The 1 or 2 times I've done it, and total stigma, I get in there and the teacher was fine. I just felt like a fish out of water, you know, and I couldn't do most of the moves, and I was even embarrassed. I'm kind of I don't know that I get embarrassed, luckily, but I just am like, when I was just in here, I don't think I'm getting much out of this. I think I need like private teaching or something. But with that said, what I did like was, I feel like it's mind, body, and energy. I like to move maybe a little bit more because I think I have to disconnect like physical exercise from yoga, even though I know it's exercise. So I don't want to like diminish it, but it is mind, body, it's everything. Because you got to be breathing right. You got to be thinking right to really get the most out of it. So I think that is the most encouraging thing that I think universally for people is the combination of how you use all three things just feels in lockstep if you're doing it right. Yeah, that's what I took away. Did I take away the right thing?
Yeah, absolutely did. And, whether you do a practice where you're the way I teach, I don't do really long holds. I do a lot more movement. Movement is the thing that is going to literally, move energy, to your point. It's going to help our lymphatic system. It helps hydrate our joints and our fascia so that we can move with more efficiency. So when you talk about energy, I don't talk about it in a woo-woo way at all. It's literally, we are bodies of energy. That is irrefutable. And so my kind of curiosity is always like, how can we better capitalize on that energy? How can we enhance it? And the best way to do that is go back to biomechanics. When we talk about energy, how you hold yourself, your posture, we spend time on posture because posture matters. It is not just like being a rigid, military style. It is when you hold yourself well, you are not leaking energy. You aren't getting tired just standing. That would be, that's really sad if you're just standing around and you start to get slumpy and tired. That's because you haven't stacked your joints appropriately, where the most amount of surface area is shared. And that's like, if you just think of Jenga blocks or anything, that's how you want to be. That's energy exchange. So like teaching from that place really is also kind of, I think it's easier for people. It's more palatable. It's more tangible. And then they ultimately feel that like less tangible kind of beautiful, like, I don't know what it is, but I just feel so good after I do yoga. And that's that flow of energy is happening. It's unimpeded.
Lara, what informed your approach? I mean, I've heard, the neuro part of it, different things. I guess we could start from the beginning. You obviously have a lot of history here, but what forms sort of the lit approach with talking with lit Lara here about yoga?
Well, I think having taught and practiced a more traditional vinyasa style was important, because that was like, I like many others was like, okay, yoga is this kind of codified, practice, and it's not meant to be changed. It's blah, blah, blah. So I practiced that way. And then by day I was, had my physical therapy hat on. And what I started to notice is when I started to bring more of my physical therapy lens into observing people when I was teaching them, it was that you're benefiting from movement, period, right? So whether or not they were encoding or practicing with any kind of biomechanical awareness, they were, it still feels good to move. But what I was noticing is people were coming in, like having maybe 8 hours at a desk, driving there, and they're coming in with their existing posture and energy. And while that, is molded and remolded a little bit in the practice, the wiring is still there. So in other words, if you're in a rounded position during the day, and then you come to yoga and I say, lift your arms up, you're going to do that automatically from the place that's the easiest to do it from. So, and then usually, especially with men, but women too, will move a lot from the rib cage. So to get that shoulder flexion, so they're doing it. They're actually executing the movements, but they're not doing it they're doing it in their just habitual way. So I started noticing that. And then I was working with my stroke patients and doing all this stuff on the ground. And they were making incredible gains, from the weight bearing, from this rewiring of the movement habits. And I just started to wonder, like, well, if they're making such great strides, what would it be like, here I am, an able-bodied, if I started just to do this a little bit prior to that movement and see what would happen? So I started doing that in my own practice, and within a month, my practice changed. It was more balanced, it was stronger, I was really accessing those deeper stabilizing muscles because I primed them and prepared them. And it's not just the muscles, but it's the brain's connection to them. So the brain-body connection, we talked about mind-body connection. The brain-body connection is essential. And so that's really where I saw, like, here's a gap. People they're coming and moving, but they're not taking away better movement habits. They're just reinforcing their existing movement habits. So if we just simply kind of rearranged the configuration of this codification, what would that look like? So I started teaching it, and people would say this. I mean, at the time, it was so strange to start on the ground. Like, now many more people are doing that. But this was over 15 years ago, and starting on the ground, doing some bridge work, doing some core work, doing some work on the hands, quadruped, and, with one arm, and going into dolphin, which is on your forearms like a down dog, to really stimulate the shoulder girdle, to prepare it. And all of that changed people's practice. And they were just like, everybody should be doing this. And that's where I started to think, maybe I need to share this in a bigger way. And my students would come up to me and say, when you're gone, I don't feel like I can go anywhere else, because I feel like I'm either going to get injured, or I'm not really, they're not really telling me in the way that you are educating me about, what to think about. Not just like, put your foot here, your arms are out to the side, lengthen your arms. It's more like, what else is going on? And so that's when I was like, okay, I had no intention of being an entrepreneur. I mean, I was like, in the health field. But I created a teacher training. And then when I created that, I thought, I've got to have a studio where people can teach. And so it just kind of started snowballing. I opened up a studio, then I started traveling and teaching and doing workshops and trainings. And people said, I want to practice with you more often. So I created an online platform in 2019. And then similarly, people wanted to do teacher trainings, but didn't have 3 or 4 weeks to take off and come and train with me. So I created an online teacher training. And that launched in January of 2020. So my platform, my online platform of classes and my online teacher training really had a boom at the time, because I had all the stuff in place during COVID years. So really it was, the short, long answer is, it was seeing a gap I just bridged the gap between physical therapy and yoga. They both have so much to offer. I wanted to bring the best of both disciplines into this practice.
Lara, what's your ideal? I mean, it obviously is healthy for anyone, but when I hear the physical therapy part of it, I almost think people that might be coming back from injury or, healing the body in some way. Am I reading into that right? Or is that?
I think that is the most common thought of physical therapy, is that you go and what I want physical therapy to mean in this context is prehab. Doing this work is the work
prehab.
You do.
I love that name.
Yeah.
Did you make that up?
Well, I say it a lot. I don't know if I made it up, but I haven't heard it before. But I think other people. But
Have you heard that word?
No, prehabilitation. I like that.
Yeah,
like that.
It's like, this is prehab. This is preventative care. This is all the things we're not doing enough of in this country. It's like to prevent. Like, I want people to not need me. I want people to become educated, and that if they can't get online with me or can't do this, they know what to do. That's the like. Let's not gatekeep this information, but share it. And that's really what I'm doing is when you have enough knowledge, you can distill it to make it really palatable for people. And my belief, again, is that you don't have to be a physical therapist to understand your body. It's your home. And we want to understand our home. We want to keep our home organized and clean. We want to, keep the maintenance up. We don't want to wait for there to be a hole in the roof and then all of a sudden be like, oh no, it's like, And that's what prehab is doing, is it's just, and in fact, it's priming your body for, I'm 55 and I move as well as I did when I was in my 20s. And I had the privilege of understanding this from a young age and a practice of it. So it's also to show that you can move well for many, many years. This whole idea of aging as this decrepit decline is another conditioning we've kind of absorbed, and doctors just reinforce that. Unfortunately, my dad was an orthopedic surgeon, bless him, but you go to a doctor and you're in your 40s and you're complaining about low back. And a lot of times they'll say, well, you are 45, as if that's the reason, right? And it's like, no,
Yeah.
No, it's not. There's stress on the body. The body is responding with the only way it can is communicating through pain signals. It doesn't mean there's something wrong. It just means something needs to change. And what I'm trying to do is do the prehab work on the mat so that you don't, if you have those sensations, you don't freak out about it. You just realize, oh, you know what? I need to get back on the mat and rebalance my body.
Yeah. Our show's kind of prehab, we're trying it to be, we're empowering people like with this knowledge so they avoid the pitfalls. And yeah, we're going to steal that one, Laura. I'll give you a footnote every time though.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think, more of this needs to be, more of this needs to be out in the world for sure. That, when we have more knowledge, we are empowered, and that empowerment makes us feel just more comfortable with stuff that happens in life, and just like you would change your diet if you needed to, when the physiology is telling you, or the symptoms are telling you, you don't just always have to reach for the easy fix.
Yeah. What's, when you get a little, maybe not nerdy, I'm like,
I love getting nerdy.
I can see that.
Yeah.
See, you're a brainiac. Lara Heimann, the founder of Lit Yoga.
Lit Laura, yeah.
But like Lit Laura, you're forever Lit Laura to me, just by the way.
I love
it. I'm going to say your whole name so you get attribution, but you're just Lit Laura forever. Laura, what's happening when we stretch, the stretching that happens in yoga? Like, talk to me like the physiology of that a little bit. Let's dork out a little bit, because I know what it feels like, and I know having more movement that comes with those stretches, but maybe give me a little, I don't know, science on that.
Sure. And this is another way I'm different, is like, I don't do kind of static long stretches. I don't do stretches where you're on the ground much at all, because it's not really functional. You don't have a base of support. And that is very different from like the, traditional yoga. Like the last 20 minutes you're on the ground doing all these forward folds. And I was like, this is kind of dumb. So, it's critical thinking. So when you're stretching, stretching. So to me, dynamic stretching is the best. And that's really what we're doing when we're moving. And it's just the stretching component comes when your biomechanics are sound. So to stretching is basically, you have two bones that come together. That's a joint, and they're moving. And then the tissues around them move with that, allow that movement, or they don't allow that movement. And that's when it feels like you're tight. So you first need to go like, well, how do I move the joint better? And so that the tissues surrounding it have more suppleness and freedom. And the physiology is that when you load something, so that's why I want to do most of these standing or weight bearing, because I'm getting this ground reaction force from the floor through my bones and tissues. And that automatically creates this energy, this charge. And that charge can be used to help the tissues stretch more. So a passive stretch, you're not doing that as much, especially if you're on the ground. But if you're pulling on the tissue with some dynamic movement that is getting you into a deeper range, not necessarily in range, you're mobilizing the joint, you're pulling on that tissue, and that tissue starts to, in a balanced way, starts to get heated and get some of that charge from the floor. And then it starts to become more pliable. It becomes more hydrated. Movement hydrates everything. It hydrates our joints, the synovial joints, but also hydrates that surrounding tissue, which is the fascia. Now, fascia is connective tissue. And if you think of like a mummy, it's wrapping everything. It wraps around our muscles, our bones, our soft tissues like our ligaments, and the joint capsule. It wraps around our organs. It's what's holding us together, essentially. So what we're really...
The glue.
Yeah, it's the glue. What we're really stretching is that fascia. And fascia at that physiological level, it responds to a stretch when you have a stabilizing force and then you have some kind of pull on that stabilizing force. If you think about somebody, if we were playing tug of war, I can produce force if you're pulling against me. But if I just pull on it and you don't pull against, there's no stabilizing force, and that wouldn't change. So it's the elastic component of our soft tissue, including the connective tissue and fascia, that can get more stretch as long as we have a stabilizing force. And that's why the biomechanics are sound. So if you collapse into a joint, you're going to feel things stretching. If I fold it over and I had my legs straight out in front of me sitting on the ground, I'm going to feel my back fascia and it will get a stretch. And that can be really satisfying, but that's temporary. It doesn't create a lasting change in that connective tissue. And that's a lot to do with the nervous system. The nervous system is saying, hey, you're getting to an end range. Hey, you're getting to a stretch. So what we're really doing is both biomechanical, physiological, but also all of that is dictated in the nervous system. And as we start to move, our nervous system starts to feel safer because we have a stabilizing counterforce, and then it allows more of that stretch to occur. Does that make sense? And that becomes that stays with you versus that temporary relief that you feel when you just do like a long static stretch without a countering stabilizing force.
You have a great way of explaining things.
I do. I know my guest. Like when I start to learn, I'm like, Laura's going to have the perfect, scientific,
I feel like,
but I'm going to understand the answer to this question.
Yeah, it's scientific without getting woo woo, but it gives me a science reason of the woo woo, right? Of almost because a lot of people, we don't talk about. Like we talk about the stretching, right? And
talk about what it is, not how it works.
Physical, but like, why do you feel so good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's not just because, let's be real. I go to church. People like to say yoga is demonic. And I literally joke about it. I'm like, yeah, I'm summoning demons in downward dog. Like, give me a break, dude. Like,
oh my God. That's what it feels like to me.
This is
I
a
feel
battle.
Like demons going through my body. When
it's demons leaving my body is what it is. Is what it is. It's like,
I always find that so funny when people.
I'm like,
I think it's
stretching?
a misunderstanding. Yeah.
No wonder I hear it so
massively.
much. I'm a man of God, not devil. I don't
well,
want that.
yoga really, what it does is it tunes you into yourself more. It connects you to yourself, and whatever practice you you have outside of that in terms of spirituality or religion, it's enhancing that connection to it. That's all it's doing, and so that's why it's like it isn't a religion itself. It's a transmitter of energy that helps you connect to that, religious.
Because I know for me, I'm much more uncomfortable in a yoga class, physically, mentally, probably emotionally, than I am if I'm with you throwing up, bench press. It's easy to just walk in and like, oh, I'm the man. But it's hard to be quiet and sit and say an uncomfortable stretch for 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And then, okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
Breathe. That's the challenge. Yeah. It's the impatience of the uncomfortability is where I've seen, that's where it's given me the mindfulness and mental strength and patience and much more brain muscle connection, mind muscle connection, whatever you want to call it, right? Where I can almost feel, okay, I'm stretching this. If I think about this stretch and I think about this muscle, it's almost, you can feel it releasing even more.
Yeah. And what you just said so eloquently there, two points. One is that a lot of times when we're doing an exercise, we're not zoning in. We're having fun. You're lifting and you feel it. You're running and you feel it. But we often like to be distracted a little bit. Like we put on music. I put on music with yoga, by the way. It's like my, I always call it like the sixth man, it's like really kind of our cheerleader, but, and because we've been celebrating with music through civilization. But it's not to distract, it's just to add. But a lot of times when we work out in other ways, we're not working in in the way that you're talking about. And like in that quiet space, that open space of like really zoning in and tuning in and experiencing sensation without necessarily reacting. And that's really what we're trying. And that's where that's that beautiful bridge into life. I know that I would not be that nice of a person if I didn't practice this. I wouldn't be as patient as a mother, as a partner. Even it's a joke. A lot of kids will say to their mothers, have you done your yoga today? Like that kind of thing, because it's like, you can see how it is this, just recalibrator. And that's why people will feel emotional and feel like, this like elevated state or whatever. And sometimes it scares them but what it's doing is it's bringing up things that either need to be felt, that you haven't experienced in. And then it's also laying down this foundation for a practice of how you respond to challenge, to discomfort, to the voices in your head. And then you can change them, right? You can't change them if you don't address them.
Yeah, you can't change them if you don't even, I put it this way. Yoga almost allows those voices to get louder for me to have the conversation to fight back. It's like same as the gym. You have to put yourself in uncomfortability to even have that, oh, you should give up. No, dude, keep putting it. And then it's like, and I know Huberman's talked about this with whatever part of our brain, right? When you do hard stuff, it gets stronger. I look at it the same with this. It's like getting over that hump. It's that mental brain exercise equal to physical. Yeah, that I might not get if I'm throwing up dumbbells with Ryan and we're like, yeah, dude, look how my veins look huge right now.
Right. I mean, they serve different purposes, right? But at the end of the day, to really alter our nervous system in the way that we operate in the world, we have to tune in. We have to recognize our patterns, and so we can change our movement patterns, but we can also change the way we speak to ourselves, the way we speak to others, the resilience that we all need. It's beautiful. And that's why I am so lit up about it. I'm really, I've been doing this for 30 years and I wake up every day and I feel I'm so excited to share it and to practice it myself because I know how much it just improves life's existence.
Lara, where can everybody learn more about what you're doing, the practice and everything?
The best way to go to find more is go to our website. It's lityoga.com. And there's all kinds of information. There's a blog on there with a lot of great, we have a PT corner. So we talk about all kinds of ways to avoid injury, or if you have an injury, do this, or there's also spiritual stuff in there. We have a podcast. It's called Redefining Movement. And then the online platform there's a link I'm going to share with you. You can probably put it in your show notes. For everybody that's listening that wants to give this a try, I'm offering you a special deal, 5 weeks for $5. And the code is Move Better. And I would just recommend, coming on, and it's called the Lit Daily. It's very robust, has so much content. We have a toggle at the top that's beginner, intermediate, advanced. Don't look at that as a label of you. Look at it as a understanding of what to expect in that class. So beginner is going to be going a little bit slower, and it's really good to do if this is new because you need that time to process. When something feels too fast, it's not fast for the sake of fast. It's the coordination that you develop that you can move with, more agility. And, but it's, so start wherever you feel like. We send you emails with lots of recommendations of like how to get started. We have a Start Here series. We have a Lit Launchpad series. Those are all great ways to kind of get to know this methodology.
Love it. Appreciate the offer. We'll have that in the show notes. And hey, I want to get lit.
Stay lit. Get lit.
All right. I'm holding you to it.
Awesome, Lara. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge and wisdom. with our audience. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan and Chris. This was such a pleasure.
Thanks, Lara.
Hey guys, you know where to find us, vibescience.com. You can find links to all the podcasts, all the highlight clips, links to Laura's generous offer. It's lit. Chris, final words say.
I already said it, everybody. Get lit, stay lit. With Lit Lara.
We're always taking you to your highest vibes here. It's mind, body, energy. We'll see you next time on Vibe Science.
The content discussed on this show is provided for reference and educational purposes. The content is not an attempt to practice medicine or provide specific medical advice. Always consult your personal physician for medical advice and proper diagnosis.
Thanks for listening. This is Vibe Science. To learn more or watch full episodes, visit vibesciencepodcast.com. Here's to discovering your highest vibe.